The other Russia story breaking tonight reveals a Trump-linked businessman pitching a business deal that would put Trump allegedly in the White House with Putin's help. A newly revealed email, this one from Trump associate Felix Sater, boasting that a Moscow business deal will, quote, get Donald elected. The email exchange documented by the New York Times, and this again involves top Trump aide Michael Cohen. Quote, I'll get Putin on this program and we will get Donald elected. Buddy, our boy can become president of the USA and we can engineer it. I will get all of Putin's team to buy in on this. I will, he wrote. Now consider what we're learning just from today's reports. On the one hand, Trump aides writing to the Kremlin asking for business help. On the other hand, Russian fixers telling Trump aides the Kremlin would help Donald Trump. This would look bad even if we didn't know that Russia ultimately hacked the 2016 election. The very combination of carrot and stick that has been chronicled by Russia experts and suggested in the infamous 2016 dossier. Now, these new emails also show Sater, the Russian businessman, recounting how weirdly in 2006 he allegedly arranged for Ivanka to sit in Putin's private chair at his desk and office in the Kremlin. Why would a businessman have such deep ties to the Kremlin? Well, Russia experts explain that under Putin, there are no truly independent private markets. Every money trail leads back to Putin if he chooses. And he rewards businessmen who do his bidding. He punishes those who do not, like his campaign to bankrupt and jail the billionaire who once ran Russia's largest oil company. As the Russian journalist and Putin dissident Masha Gessen wrote, explaining that story, Putin used the attack to give the Russian business community two options: bend to Putin's will or suffer the fate of a now jailed billionaire. Joining me is that Russian-American journalist, Masha Gessen, the author of The Man Without a Face, The Unlikely Rise of Vladimir Putin. Also with me, Ken Delaney, an NBC News intelligence reporter who has been on this story from the start. And back with us, former White House ethics lawyer Richard Painter and former U.S. ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul. Masha, I start with you. We see all of these new emails telling this story. Does it fit with what we know about Putin's Russia?
Well, I'm not sure what story these emails are telling, so let's just not rush to conclusions, right? That email from Sater makes no sense. I mean, can you make it make sense? I can't make it make sense.
I could make it make sense. I don't know if it's true. I think he's pitching the idea that Russia would be helpful and the business deal would be good for Donald financially and politically.
But we don't understand what he's saying, right? I mean, there's what the connection is between the business deal and getting Donald elected.
It's not articulated.
It is not at all articulated. I mean, it's considering that we also have learned that Michael Cohen wrote to Peskov, Putin's press secretary, and apparently it sputtered and ended in nothing. This isn't much of a story that's being told by these emails, right? If you're asking me about the connection between business and the Kremlin, no business is done in Russia without the Kremlin. Right? If you want to have success, if you want to have a chance of success, you have to have connections to the Kremlin.
Ambassador, can you speak to that and your view of the theory of the case in the emails? I mean, again, I agree, we don't know. One theory, though, and the reason why these are of what we would call investigative interest is they suggest part of a larger conversation about Russians offering to help Donald Trump in the same way that the Trump Tower meeting had Russians saying, allegedly, they were speaking on behalf of the Kremlin and could rough up Hillary Clinton in an information campaign.
Well, that's right. I mean, there's a larger narrative out there with lots of data to support it that, you know, the Kremlin wanted Trump to win and did what they could to try to help him win, including most audaciously stealing emails from the DNC and John Podesta and publishing them. We know that to be true. We also know it to be true that there were connections between Trump-affiliated people and Russian-affiliated Kremlin people, business people, that were trying to do business deals. As you know, as back as early as 2008, that trail has been talked about. What we don't know is the details of that trail, precisely because we haven't seen the tax documents. We haven't had full disclosure of what was happening. And that's why when we see things like this, it raises a question, is there a bigger story here? These emails, I agree with Masha, are not definitive in that, but the fact that we didn't know about these contacts before, we didn't know that there was a Trump Tower being proposed in Moscow until before,
I mean,
begs the question, what is it that we need to know the full story?
Right. I mean, Ken, that's the flip side. If this were all coming out in the normal course, say, around the month it happened, then it would look perhaps less suspicious. The problem is the sound I just played, in the interest of time, I'm not going to play it again, was all of these very public, very categorical denials of having any business in Russia, Ken.
Well, that's absolutely right, Ari. I mean, it's extraordinary. Even leaving aside this whole question of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, it would have been extraordinary for any major party candidate for president to be like, oh, by the way, I have this business deal I'm trying to do with Vladimir Putin's government in Russia, and I'd like to be your president. I mean, that would be a disqualifier in many senses in any other election. So we didn't know that was happening at the time, and Donald Trump actually denied it. But the other interesting thing about this whole exchange and these emails is this character, Felix Sater. He's one of the most mysterious and fascinating characters in the whole Trump-Russia saga. You know, he Russian-born, Brooklyn-raised. He got into trouble back in the 90s. He got in a bar fight and served jail time after allegedly stabbing a man with a margarita glass.
I think it was a broken margarita glass. He's on the far right for our viewers, the man you're talking about. Go ahead.
Exactly. So fast forward to 2008, he is implicated in a stock swindle, a mafia-connected stock swindle, but makes a deal with the FBI and spends years cooperating to the point where the Justice Department later says he was very helpful in a national security sense. We still don't know the extent of his cooperation and what he did, but he's also working for Donald Trump. He's got a business card that says he's working for Trump. But in a deposition, Trump says, I wouldn't know this guy if he walks into a room. So now we have Michael Cohen in these emails saying Sater was trying to get me to go to Moscow, and I didn't want to. There's an implication there. Was Sater a dangle? Was Sater working for the Russians, trying to induce, you know, the Trump organization? There's a lot we don't know about why this deal didn't come to fruition. But here's what we do know. Michael Cohen emailing NBC News today. He talked to Donald Trump about this deal on 3 occasions, he said, and signed a non-binding letter of intent in 2015.
Richard Painter, your view on this part and the Sater connection and the lack of transparency.
Well, it's just one more shoe to drop on the centipede. I mean, there have been shoes dropping on the Russia story literally every other day, or certainly every week since the election. The big picture is that the Russians have been at this game at least since the 1917 revolution in Russia, where the communists sought to undermine Western democracies and choose who would run governments in Europe. And they succeeded, particularly after World War II, in Eastern Europe, not only through tanks and weaponry and armed force, but through manipulation of elections and through the communist parties. They tried in the United States. They didn't succeed. But they struck the jackpot on this one. It's abundantly obvious. They wanted Donald Trump in the White House. He was their man. They didn't like Clinton. They didn't like the Obama administration. And they feel that President Trump is going to be beholden to them. This needs to be investigated by the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. This goes well beyond the criminal investigation of Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller. It's critically important that we know whether our president is beholden to the Russians. We know that the Russians helped choose him as president, but to what extent is he beholden to the Russians? Are we a banana republic? Are we going to have other world powers choosing our leadership? Or are we an independent country? And this is an issue that Congress needs to address, and all of these facts need to be laid out on the table. We need to find out about the Trump organization's financial arrangements with the Russians and payments he's receiving. They haven't opened the books. They won't even disclose the tax returns. All of this needs to be disclosed immediately. It's not a partisan issue. This is an American issue. It's about our own independence and our national security.
Masha, you're bowing your head. I don't know if it's skeptically or mournfully.
It is skeptical. I think it's overstating the evidence that we have. Right? We know Americans elected Donald Trump. Right? And it is a huge problem that we have that Americans elected Donald Trump. He lies. He admires Vladimir Putin, apparently quite sincerely, regardless of whether Putin has anything on him or not. He is destroying the American government as it was constituted before he became president. All of this is out in the open. That doesn't make the United States a banana republic. That's not Putin doing that stuff. That's Trump doing this stuff. Right? And,
so you're talking about Americans being accountable for
I'm talking about Americans being accountable, and I'm talking about focusing on what's out in the open instead of imagining that somebody is pulling the strings and turning the United States into a banana republic, which is just such an absurd thing to say.
Do you think Trump has autocratic tendencies?
Absolutely, Trump has autocratic tendencies.
So I think what Richard's referring to is the notion that you have the potential foreign meddling with well, not potential, the meddling in, the collusion in question, and then Trump governing the way he is?
We don't know anything about collusion. So far, the evidence that you have just produced is evidence of corruption. It is, in fact, further evidence of Trump lying, as if we needed any more evidence of Trump lying.
Last word, Ambassador.
Well, I feel like we're talking about apples and oranges here. On the one hand, are we a banana republic? No, we're not. Our institutions are strong. We're going to survive the Trump presidency. I'm very confident in saying that. That doesn't mean that there's not suspicious things involved in the relationship between the Trump organization and various Russian individuals. And I just go back to the point I made earlier. Why is it only when somebody does incredible investigative reporting that we hear about this? That, to me, suggests that they're covering up something. And if they didn't have anything to cover up, they should just lay it all out in one 24-hour story, and we would be done with it. The fact that they don't leads me to believe that there's more that we need to learn.
And Trump aides writing to the Kremlin asking for business help. On the other hand, Russian fixers telling Trump aides the Kremlin would help Donald Trump. This would look bad even if we didn't know that Russia ultimately hacked the 2016 election. The very combination of carrot and stick that has been chronicled by Russia experts and suggested in the infamous 2016 dossier. Now, these new emails also show Sater, the Russian businessman, recounting how weirdly in 2006 he allegedly arranged for Ivanka to sit in Putin's private chair at his desk and office in the Kremlin. Why would a businessman have such deep ties to the Kremlin? Well, Russia experts explain that under Putin, there are no truly independent private markets. Every money trail leads back to Putin if he chooses. And he rewards businessmen who do his bidding. He punishes those who do not. Like his campaign to bankrupt and jail the billionaire who once ran Russia's largest oil company. Again involves top Trump aide Michael Cohen. Quote, "I'll get Putin on this program and we will get Donald elected. Buddy, our boy can become president of the USA and we can engineer it. I will get all of Putin's team to buy in on this. I will," he wrote. Now consider what we're learning just from today's reports. On the one hand, the other Russia story breaking tonight reveals a Trump-linked businessman pitching a business deal that would put Trump allegedly in the White House with Putin's help. A newly revealed email, this one from Trump associate Felix Sater, boasting that a Moscow business deal will, quote, get Donald elected. The email exchange documented by the New York Times, and this